Hi, my name is Andrew Bartholomew. I'm with the Digimarc marketing team, and I'm joined by Devon Weston, Digimarc's Director of Client Management and an expert on digital brand protection. Devon, clearly the internet is awash with digital content, much of which is owned by brands and then accessed and often used illegally by other parties. Some of these incidents are somewhat innocent in nature. I'm thinking about like the student in college who uses a copyrighted image to aid a report. But there are also certainly times when image stealing is just the tip of a much larger iceberg when it comes to these brand protection threats. Can you talk about why brands should take this issue seriously?
Sure. So hopefully, if you're here and you're watching this, you are taking this seriously. But I will say, these days, everything and everyone is a brand. We are sort of, made or broken based on the strength of our these days personal brands, corporate brands, that kind of thing. Really, I think as more consumers move online, especially now, in our current state, our pandemic and stay home orders, I think the ability to differentiate and to really drive value into customers and drive really a customer sort of lifetime value is based on your brand and based on the strength of that brand. So it's really, I think it's always been important, but these days it's just even more important to sort of differentiate yourself and continue to drive that value as we continue to move online.
You touched on the fact that virtually every company today has some level of digital presence. But are there particular industry segments that are especially susceptible to these brand protection challenges?
Sure. So, I mean, in my view, the stronger the brand, the more threat that they face, the more they have to lose. You can also sort of think, luxury brands in particular, higher priced items, or just higher value items, and that's inclusive of, I mean, you can think the typical stuff. Apparel, cosmetics, houseware, lifestyle, that kind of thing. But really, it's just anyone who has that strength of brand, has a following, or has to build a following. So luxury brands are right up at the top. We also see in our work a lot of hardware manufacturers are the other sort of big segment. Again, because of the value of those products and also sort of the sensitivity and uniqueness of each of their different hardware parts and product lines, as well as very, very large distribution networks for those. So in our work, those are the two who we certainly see the most, and we see the most to gain and lose. So yeah.
Now let's shift to how brands can combat this issue. So what are some of the strategies that companies use today, and where does Digimarc fit into those strategies?
Sure. So I think, we can't talk strategy without talking the threat. And I would say, the threats are sort of numerous under the brand and brand protection, space. I think the two that most people are familiar with, and certainly the two that come up most in our work, are counterfeiting and, pre-release product leaks. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those threats and then how companies are strategizing to address those. So in terms of pre-release product leaks, this is something we've all heard about, right? So, again, think of like a hardware manufacturer, and like schematics or early release product images are leaked online before a product is set to actually be released. In addition to potentially degrading the brand and degrading the excitement in a really, dedicated consumer base, you actually run the risk of, development of knockoffs and ripoffs to sort of saturate the market and undermine, the significance of that new product release far in advance. Now, I think in this space too, the companies that are used to dealing with this are doing some of the most in terms of strategizing to address that. So of course, the first thing is just extreme security around all of the assets that accompany a new product. Whatever that means, a limited number of people who even have access to it, right? So it starts at the beginning. I would say a really effective digital asset management platform, whether that's something that you have internally, again, for highly sensitive products, or something that you look to, a platform provider for. And then, in terms of Digimarc, we're looking in today's topics, and especially at images, and being able to, if that leak occurs, if a schematic is leaked, if a product image is leaked in advance, to be able to trace that back to the source, so that at least next time you can say, okay, this is where the leak came from, and we're going to cut this off. Now, in terms of addressing counterfeiting activities, the actual counterfeiting of goods, the best brand protection strategy have many layers, and the most sophisticated companies have been adding layers on layers on layers for years. This is not new. These go, I think the most sort of robust and strategic, of course, is engagement with local law enforcement in areas where counterfeit production is actually happening, because you don't stand really a chance of shutting that down unless you actually get to that point. But there's a lot leading up to that. A lot of different organizations for years have put different types of trackers, and that is very broadly defined, into their products. And that's to both help trace, legitimate as well as identify illegal goods. When it comes to Digimarc's application in this space, as far as product images goes, what happens basically is that we all, again, as consumers, are demanding much more in the way of product imagery to accompany each of the products that we're buying online. People produce beautiful imagery of these products, and then these illegal operations will scrape the metadata, pull all of that, and post it up onto an illegal marketplace site, whether that's one that they pop up themselves, which is a pretty common practice, that they do some creative top level domain mimicking and that kind of thing, and then just list these things at sort of cut rate price, but they're using real product imagery. So an unwitting consumer might say, oh, that's the one that I want, and it's 50% the cost. That's the one I'm going to go for. So what our customers are able to do is ID those images without reasonable doubt. There's no more eyeballing. They just go in and they say, okay, this is our image. The first thing they can do, first and immediate most thing they can do, is actually send takedown notices, legal takedown notices for those images to site operators and hosting service providers. If that is successful, then you can actually get those sites removed. So that cuts down a lot of the visibility, cuts down the revenue channels to those illegal counterfeit operations. Something a lot of our customers also do is say, okay, I'm going to get this site removed, but I'm going to now engage with our legal specialist to find out more, so that I can drill down to find the operators of this, and do the operators of this site actually track back, to a physical manufacturing operation for counterfeit goods. So that's kind of the big play there. But I would also be remiss to mention, while we're mainly talking about digital image assets today, Digimarc also applies digital identities to packaging and other mediums in order to authenticate products and track and trace items back through the supply chain. We're even doing a lot of R&D work right now on direct parts marking with laser ablation. So that's super exciting. And Digimarc is really addressing, brand protection very holistically, recognizing you can't just focus on one part and call that an end-to-end solution. So that's really something that any organization in brand protection strategy already knows, and we're adding a lot of layers into that. So
I think that a lot of the listeners and viewers of this can relate to that scenario that you described of encountering a product online that seems absurdly priced low, and seeing that accompanying image, which is clearly the actual product image or the actual branded image, but sensing that clearly the product that they're selling is not authentic based on that price. So that's a really good example. You did mention digital asset management systems during your last response. How does Digimarc impact or work within those existing investments?
Yeah. So happily, again, talking about image management, we have existing integrations with a lot of leading digital asset management platforms. It's really, I think it's the most sort of efficient and quick way to, to get us up and going and to sort of add that. And digital asset management platforms, DAM platforms, offer a lot of existing tools for controlling your assets. For, we talk about the pre-release image leaks. This is, a lot of people call this embargoed images. So they have tools to embargo your images, to just define subsets of people who have access to them. And then if you flip, Digimarc on in any of these DAM providers, you can add that ID to each of those places, and you can add a lot of like detail in terms of the tracking. There's never any personal data that's part of the IDs that are part of our encoding. It's just a digital transaction code, and it just follows that asset throughout the web. So I think it's really, one of the first questions we have when a customer comes to us and they're interested in Digimarc is, are you using a DAM right now, and can we activate you in there? So just a really efficient way to get up and going.
Definitely a complementary relationship for sure.
Yeah.
As we said in the introduction, a big part of your role is client success and client management. So I thought we could close, Devon, with you talking about how Digimarc clients, the ones that you work with, typically define success.
Sure. So this runs the gamut, and I think in terms of brand protection, you have to expect that this is gonna keep going. You can't, brand protection. And it's not going to end because the counterfeit activities are not going to end, unfortunately. So it's just kind of a continuous cycle of finding better ways to detect these things, to reduce the visibility, to remove them. For our customers, for our image customers, it's finding an ID in that image. This image is out on the web. It's usually, hundreds of images, on specific sites, and then, just multiples of that. And if they can positively identify an image, that's a flag that leads them to say, okay, now I can take this action. Now I know that this image is somewhere where it either is or isn't supposed to be, and then I can do what I need to do, to address that, to get the content taken down, to notify my legal team, whatever that is. So for us, it's really just that we facilitate them continuing that positive identity. And I like to say no more eyeballing, right? Because there really are teams of people who have to look through these, listings and say, okay, I think this is ours. Yeah, that looks like last season. But with us, it's automated. You can actually just feed that through a reader and say, okay, these are our images. Now let's go. So really, I think that's what it is. It's being able to identify that image and do it quickly and easily.
And to your point earlier, strengthening those layers of your overall strategy.
Absolutely.
Well, Devon, thank you. Devon Weston is Digimarc's Director of Client Management and an expert on digital brand protection. You can learn more about Digimarc's digital brand protection solutions by visiting our website or emailing Devon directly. Thanks for watching, and take care, everyone.